the answer is no, maybe sometimes, I don't know. Hello ocean people, I am Maria and welcome to Sea&me. I've realized that one of the most asked questions on Google and YouTube related to marine biology is whether marine biologists travel a lot or not. So there are two kinds of traveling that you can associate with marine biologists. And the first one is research related, so whether you have to go to conferences, fieldwork, or anything related to your specific research. And the second is whether you need to travel because you are just changing your job. I will start with the first one, which is traveling for research related things, which is what I think you probably are more interested in. Whether you need or can travel for your research depends on two things, I would say. The first one is your research topic or field, and the second is money. Starting with the first one. So let's start with an example. This is a totally made up example, by the way. Let's say you study the Great Barrier Reef, which is in the Pacific just outside the northeast coast of Australia, and your group is based in Paris in France. If for your research you need data which requires any kind of field observations or samples, you will probably have to go to the Great Barrier Reef to collect them, you or anyone else from your research group. However, if you study the same thing, but you live in Northeast Australia, where the coral reef is basically just outside your door, lucky you, by the way, then you will probably not have to travel far to have access to this environment, which means that you will probably not have to travel far if you study the Great Barrier Reef and you're working in Australia. In my case, for instance, or the case of anyone in my working group, we study marine microbes, and our group is based in Vienna, Austria, which is a landlocked country, which means no access to the ocean anywhere in the country. So for us to have access to the ocean and to collect samples, we have to go to a country from which we can have access to the ocean. So we do need to travel. Basically, what this means is you will travel if you need to, you will not travel if you don't need to. Basically, if you can't study something which is already in your backyard, you will not spend money or time to go somewhere else on the other side of the world to be able to study it. Which brings me to my second point, which is money. Money, money, money in a rich man's world. Sorry. To go wherever, whenever, to do whatever, you will always need money. You will need money for your travel expenses, living costs, equipment, and anything else you might need to do your research. And this money, unless you have it in your pocket or you are prepared to pay it for you yourself, comes from elsewhere. And elsewhere normally takes the shape of projects. Let me explain to you how things normally work in science. Science in general, not only marine biology. Most of the money that we have for our research and many times for our salaries come from projects which were funded by funding agencies, to projects which were written either by you or your supervisors or even your colleagues. These projects have to go through a reviewing process, which is the first obstacle for your project to be accepted. So basically your reviewers, normally anonymous, have to like your project and your project has to be positively evaluated. Then the funding agency and the scientific board of the funding agency still has to decide which projects it will fund. Of course, the more money the funding agency has, the more projects will it be able to fund. And additionally, the more money the funding agency has, more money will come with the projects which are accepted. These funding agencies are normally government funding agencies, which means that the amount of money that each agency has to give to projects or for research depends on how much money the government allocates for science, basically. So as you can already probably imagine, this brings a huge inequality to the amount of money that each institution or each individual might get depending on which country or which region you are living in. Of course, there are also international funding institutions, there are also private funding institutions, but they are not as common, and in most of the countries, most of the projects are government funded. Obviously, if you already know that you probably will not get enough money to do research on the other side of the world, you will probably not write a research project that would require you to do so. So you will write a research project where you could probably do on your backyard if you can then spend the money for something else, like for hiring someone to help you, or even for other lab equipment or something which might be more important for your research. Now let's talk about the other type of traveling, which is traveling because you just need to find another job somewhere. This is, I don't like talking about this very much because it really depends on so many things, but I will try to just keep it simple. So as a scientist, unless you have a permanent position somewhere in a university or an institution, you depend on scholarships and project money, projects such as the ones I just talked to you just a minute ago. Which is, well, and most of the scientists, or the most percentage of scientists are in this position, or in the position of not having permanent positions. And these scholarships and these projects normally have a time limit of between 2 and, if you're very lucky, 5 to 6 years, which means that after this time you will need, as a scientist, to find new places where to get your salary from. Either you apply for new scholarships, or you write a new project which is accepted, or whatever you can to get money for research and your salary. And sometimes this requires you to change country, to change city, to change continent, and that's just how it is. On the other hand, sometimes you might want that because science is an international field, and generally it's an enriching experiment as a human being and as a scientist to also have at some point in your life some experience abroad. This was it, ocean people. This was the video for today. If you have any questions regarding this topic, please write in the comment section below. And if you have any other questions or any other comments, please do so as well. And other thing, I have an Instagram account and a Twitter, which I will put in the description section below in case you are interested in following my life, the other side of my life. That was it. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you in the next I try to make it funny, but I'm not sure it's funny.